Hello and welcome to a new episode of Bite-Sized Book History. I'm your host, Allie Alvis, who you may know better as Book Historia. I'm a book historian and rare book cataloger at antiquarian book dealer Type Punch Matrix. So, friends, my dirty little secret is not so little, nor is it particularly a secret. I love yucky books. Grubby, well-loved, very good minus. There are plenty of euphemisms for books that have seen better days. But why disguise the obvious? Why not embrace the yuckiness? My love for these kinds of books isn't just for the aesthetic. There's so much book history to be learned from damaged books. In fact, you may recognize some of the things I'm about to talk about from previous episodes. Through wear and tear and love, books can tell us a lot about themselves and the people that read them. So let's go on a tour of some wonderfully awful things you might find working with rare books. Starting inside and working our way out, perhaps one of the most startling things to find in a book is a bug. Most bugs with bibliographic final resting places were simply at the wrong place at the wrong time. Snapping a book shut on an unexpected creepy crawly is definitely a reaction that has come down through the generations. But others were put there on purpose. Likely one of the oldest surviving entomological specimens was found tucked into the pages of Thomas Moffat's 1634 publication, Theatre of Insects. Even vertebrates sometimes meet a bibliographic end. Someone found this lizard inside a book in 2015. Now, I am not here to speculate on whether or not it would be possible to pull human DNA from these bugs and make some sort of Jurassic Park situation for 17th century readers. Because, in fact, it's not necessary. There is already enough human stuff left in the gutters of old books for scientists to use and to DNA sequence. The Folger Library's Project Dust Bunny has explored the biological information left behind by readers of the past. Using a Q-tip-like tool, scientists lifted dust out of the gutters of a 400-year-old Bible. They were able to sequence the DNA of 2 individuals, and they even found bacteria to suggest that one of these 2 people had acne. The human detritus to be found in books is not limited to the microscopic. Hair is a common find in old books, and in this Bible behind me, I have been so lucky or unlucky as to find fingernails. The Sediment of Reading project at University College London is currently studying all this stuff and more, including plant matter and wax dripped onto pages from reading by candlelight. Marginalia is a more explicit page-based clue to readers and their habits. Marginalia is a term that refers to notes taken in the margins of books and sometimes in between lines of text. For centuries, making notes in the margins as you read was a critical and encouraged part of consuming a text. Readers added cross-references to other texts, underlined and flagged passages they found important, and even wrote down personal reactions. There are also a healthy dose of doodles left behind by readers young and old. If you want a deeper dive on marginal notes, check out my episode on the topic. But who were all these people? Well, if you're lucky, you can find owner names in old books that shed a little bit of light on the identity of these readers. Some owners wrote their names on the paste downs, others directly onto the title page. And some owners actually wrote their names within the text of books. And some names have been deliberately hidden. Kate McCaffrey, now an assistant curator at Hever Castle outside of London, came across some smudges when she was researching a book of hours that once belonged to Anne Boleyn. Legend has it that Boleyn had this very book of hours on her person when she was executed by Henry VIII, and it bears a note in her hand. But the smudges were a mystery. McCaffrey used a black light and photo processing to reveal the presence of 4 heretofore unknown signatures in the margins of the manuscript, all relatives of one of Boleyn's most trusted friends. These 3 women and 1 man kept the manuscript safe during a time when any association with the executed queen could mean dire circumstances. It is thanks to their stewardship that the manuscript survives today. You can read more about McCaffrey's find in the article linked in my description below. Bookplates are another way of learning who owned a book in the past. A bookplate is an ownership label, and is also often called an ex libris. They're usually printed and often found on the front paste down of a book. Owners from noble backgrounds often incorporated their armorial crests into their bookplates, and more modern bookplates often sport designs that are meaningful to their owners. In books with long histories, it's not unusual to find evidence of removed bookplates, or even more than one bookplate. Some owners stuck their bookplates directly on top of old bookplates. And taking a closer look at these can reveal hidden treasure. Book collector David L. DeLaura, who in his own words prefers grubby books, a man after my own heart, recently made one such discovery. In his copy of the second edition of Sir Isaac Newton's Optics, he saw the ghost of a bookplate under that of James Musgrave. The earlier hidden bookplate belonged to one Charles Huggins, whose father purchased the entirety of Newton's library after his death. It turns out that DeLaura was in possession of Newton's own copy of Optics. For more information on this incredible discovery, you can check out the recent Fine Books and Collections article that I have linked in my description. Now let's see what yucky outsides can tell us about book history. Book bindings were made to protect books, so it's little wonder they often bear the brunt of damage. Loss of material on the spine may reveal interesting structural aspects, such as what the supports are made of and how they're attached to the book. It can also reveal manuscript or printed scraps that binders use to reinforce areas. These scraps, called binder's waste, were usually made of discarded books that no longer had textual value in their time. Ironically, books that went for scrap back then can be bibliographic holy grails today. Patrick Olson recently discovered one such scrap treasure in the spine of a book printed in 1490. This is a scrap of the work Ars Minor by Donatus, a book printed with the same movable type as the Gutenberg Bible. In fact, some scholars speculate that the Ars Minor was printed before the Gutenberg Bible. But we cannot know for sure. The work only survives as fragments like these. Olson's Donatus fragment is only the second known example that has remained intact in the binding it was used to reinforce. Olson has written an excellent account of his discovery, which I've linked below. Damage or loss to the covers can show off their composition, like this little book from 1807 printed in America. The loss of the paper on these covers reveal that they are made out of scale board. Scale board was a cheap alternative to wooden boards or pulp boards in early America. This thinly cut wood was stiff and good in a pinch, but it was brittle, as you can see, and often didn't last very long. In addition to all this damage, there are owner repairs that can tell us a lot about a book's history. For instance, this little volume bears a cover made out of sailcloth. This is a child's school book, and the use of sailcloth implies that perhaps the child who used this book was part of a sailing community, perhaps on the seashore, and maybe their parents even worked in shipbuilding. You can see that below this cover, the book has lived a very long and exciting life. There are also many examples of, shall we say, spirited sewn spine repairs. In the trade, we call these vernacular repairs. Bookseller Garrett Scott calls these non-specialist additions to books vernacular-opegi. He's written a manifesto about the importance of studying these aspects of books in their own right, which I've linked below. A place where many of these different kinds of yuckiness come together are books used by children, or school books. It's well known that children are not quite as careful as their adult counterparts when it comes to using books. So the bulk of my yucky book collection is actually 19th century American school books. From generations of owner names to outlandish doodles, so many doodles, to curses upon would-be book thieves, paging through these school books is a really evocative reminder of how little reading has changed in some ways. That does it for this episode of Bite-Sized Book History. I've got a pretty healthy further reading section below, so make sure to check out all those links to find out more about the projects I called out in this episode. Also down there are links to my Etsy and my Patreon, and don't forget to like and subscribe and drop a comment below if you have any suggestions for further videos or any comments on this one. I'll see you next time, and remember, don't bite your books.